We bring river barges to a new river port and build a small town to service all the shipping traffic coming into Reddington. Welcome back to Reddington, a nice southern town on the fringes of Appalachia. We've got a beautiful view of Stony Park right here in the middle of downtown Reddington, with the backdrop of the mountains in the distance, and you can see the dirt roads heading off into the countryside here. Want to take this episode, which is probably going to be a little shorter than what we've been having lately, to really get into the geography and add an important connection to the outside world that Reddington would have had. If we zoom out a little bit, we can see that there's all sorts of water, this really cool lake. I'm telling myself that that's spring-fed by all the runoff from the mountains further to the south. And, by the way, that is south. All these rivers are going north. Now that seems kind of strange. If you're not super familiar with interior geography of the United States, then you'd wonder, well, what? Rivers are going north of the Appalachians. Well, that would be the Ohio Valley or the Tennessee Valley. I gotta really sort of tell myself the story here that this is maybe the Tennessee River heading north of someplace like Knoxville or Chattanooga. Although the original inspiration for the town, although the geography is still not quite exactly right for this either, is Greenville, South Carolina. Somebody on Discord got me looking at the map there, and I thought, hey, this is a pretty cool idea. I want to make a southern town. And sort of jumped into it, didn't really think a whole lot about the map. But now that I am thinking about it, this road that we built here, this would be the way to connect to points east. And, someplace like New York or Philadelphia, you'd have to take this road if you wanted to get there by land. A way faster way would probably be by water. It seems strange to think that, but water was a lot faster way to get around. And that's why they built canals and things like that in like the 1820s, 1830s, and so on. Just before the railroads came in the 1840s and 50s and upended everything. So we're in the period just before the railroads hit. So we need to connect to the outside world, but we're not going to be connecting to a New York or a Philadelphia, which were huge cities on the East Coast. We're going to be connecting to something much smaller and further away, and a lot of communities in between that were very small and really upstarts, like New Orleans. New Orleans had been around for a while. It was a decent-sized port city, perhaps, but nothing in comparison to the markets that the East Coast would offer. So Reddington's not going to be connected to that just yet. We have to have the railroads to connect that first. But what we're going to do is add a connection to the waterways heading north here out of the map. And we're going to use this landing here. Now, I spent a lot of time sculpting this landing last time because I wanted to basically make it have be part of the backstory for Reddington. This is where the first settlers arrived from the north, well, really from the west and the south, but the way the river flows, it comes from the north. And they thought, hey, this is a great spot. Plus, we can't get any further because there's a waterfall here and basically a waterfall there because of those big rocks. You could not navigate this, but if we're going this direction, that's very easy to navigate. So that would be where we'll have our water connection. And the map just happens to have that already. So what we're going to do is add a little port here, but I don't want to add a normal size port. This would not be for ocean going containers because that's not what you have inland in the first place. So what we're going to do is use a mod and an asset that I found in the workshop, and we're going to resculpt some of this terrain. If we take a look at the terrain lines, let's go into our terrain edit view. Maybe that'll make it a little easier for us to see. Once I remember where they put that, there it is. All right, so you get the idea of where the water line is, and I, of course, made it so that the channel for the river runs out from those rocks. And there's really some nice sort of still water running through here. This wouldn't be too turbulent of a spot. It would have been kind of complicated to hit, but I think it would still be a good place to build like a barge port or something like that. Of course, barges probably weren't built too much for rivers back in that period either, but we're going to fudge it a little bit, just like we did with having semi-trucks driving around. So this isn't completely, perfectly, historically accurate, but I want to just reproduce how the town would have developed over time. Now, Reddington is way up north. Some people have said, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would it be all the way up here when everything is coming from the river? Well, that's because Reddington's not connected to the outside world, even by river, through a really great means. So outside markets aren't really going to play a huge role. A lot of Reddington's business is going to be local. It just happens to be situated at a really good junction on a pretty big waterway. So we're going to go with that story. And the other thing too is sometimes, there's a lot of trees in here, but there's a lot of times where land alongside the river is not all it's cracked up to be. Mosquitoes, malaria, those were things in the United States early in the nation's history. It was only because of chemicals like DDT, which we were really paying a price for, that as far as I understand anyway, that's really what made it so we don't have malaria and problems like that that you might have on other continents here. So living by the river wasn't necessarily the greatest thing, especially, well, also because it flooded. You're not going to have a town right here by the landing, because this river, believe me, it has not been tamed. And maybe, this would also be very realistic, maybe if I can think my way through it, you might even think about building some hydroelectric dams on some of these rivers, because that's a very realistic thing that happened, but that's coming way down the pipe. We're going to have a lot of other changes that are going to happen first, like the railroads. We're not going to get to the railroads in this episode. We're going to focus on the river traffic right here and how that would affect the development of the area. So we're going to build a respectable barge port. So that means that more markets have opened up, and Reddington needs that to bring in and take out goods that it has been producing or that it needs. So we're going to resculpt this a little bit here. First, let's get a key built. And I know it looks like it's spelled Quay, and I've said it Quay a million times myself, but the actual pronunciation is key. All right, so we need to build a key, and we're just going to try to wall this off a little bit to keep the floodwaters out. It doesn't like where I have this right now. The river is sort of at flooding stage here. All right, so we're going to sculpt this first then. Until I haven't worked with a lot with the hydrodynamics here. So we'll level this out. I'll make my brush a little bigger here. Hopefully this will allow me to do what I want to do. Come on, water. Now we're getting it. Extend that a little bit. Extend this a little bit just to block things out. Actually, I'll move it at this point. It's just going to be a lot easier. Extend it right into that rock right there. So really think that's what would happen. All right, so now I want to make sure that this thing is level alongside the waterfront, and I also want to make sure that it's not too low. And I'll extend this just a little bit more. All right, that should be good enough. Now let's take away some of this water here so we can have a little bit of a harbor. I don't want to go too shallow or too deep here. It might be a little bit too deep. I don't want the land to appear underneath that key. Keep in mind these are barges and not ships, so hopefully they won't be too hard to work with. Now this is a mod that I found in the workshop, the river cargo harbor. This is going to be killer here. I'm going to need anarchy to place it, I think. I didn't even know this mod was on the workshop. It's very plain Jane. Doesn't really have a whole lot to it. We're going to have to get some electricity and water over here. So we'll start with that. And now I need to reconfigure the road because I have reconfigured the land. I also want to make sure, this looks like a little bit of a low spot right here. So we're going to take away the historical landing that was here and convert it for industrial use, which is a very American thing to do. Let's try I think I need to go with this point up here a little bit more. All right, so now we've got a nice flat area here. Oops, that's not what I want. Got a nice flat area right here. Should have all of that hidden underneath there. And I need to get the road down into the port. And we're just going to stick with a dirt road for the time being, because I'm not sure where I'm going to run this road, and I'm not sure how all it's going to connect. And honestly, I don't know if this would have been upgraded really quick anyway. Now, this is going to be busy because of the game, but I don't know that it would have necessarily been busy because of the shipping traffic, realistically speaking. Now, do I have straight slope turned on? Let's turn that on. Yeah, okay, that's not bad. It's not quite everything I'd want it to be, but it looks pretty good. Let's smooth that out just a tad. Well, it looks like it doesn't want to be any smoother, so we're just going to go with it like that. All right, so now we need to get some water and electricity over here. Let me take care of that. All right, so I got water and power, but it looks like I have more water than I expected. So I'm going to build a facility that is going to really help with that water problem. If we go to our disasters, this is part of the natural disasters DLC, and I'm looking for, it doesn't look like it's in there, it's under water infrastructure where it pops up, I think. Pumping service, that's what I'm looking for. So I need a pumping service to make it so that I don't end up with all these problems. Where should I put this? Let's find a nice flattish place in the terrain where we'll have access to power. How about right here? And I need a connection to water. Now I'm probably going to move that at some point, but right now that's a convenient place to put that asset. It's just going to send out trucks that will go pump out water. Now probably that is run off already, but I'm going to have that handy just in case this thing overflows. I really have to watch this to see how high the water level really gets. But as you can see, we've already got a whole slew of trucks coming down. I have not seen yet one of our river barges, but there's a couple of things that you get. Oh, hey, here's one. This is what I'm talking about. So these are much smaller than the typical. Let me just pause that and we'll follow it. Woo! We'll follow that into port here. So these river barges look a whole lot nicer, in my opinion, than the gigantic the gigantic ocean-going ships would for this particular instance. So this is a little more realistic. They wouldn't be using containers back in the 19th century. They hardly even used them here in the States in the 20th century. Now they're pretty much where everything comes from, just about, if it comes from overseas. So this will be kind of a little ahead of its time, but at the same time, it's pretty realistic. There's still a lot of just loose cargo that's shipped by sea and by river in the United States. Actually, not so much by sea, but by river. Well, unless you want to count the Great Lakes, I suppose. There are all sorts of really cool ships that bring iron ore into steel mills and stuff on the Great Lakes. So you see a lot of those. On the rivers, though, in the United States, like the Mississippi, the Ohio, probably the Tennessee for sure, I would think, you're going to see some of these really big, but not that big, barges pushing, anything from grain to minerals to, there's all sorts of stuff that are moved up and down the Mississippi Valley using these things. Now, of course, we've got another ship that's popped up. This particular asset does make it so that you only see, oh no, that's one of the big ocean ships. I did not turn that off. Probably would have been a good idea to do that because that looks kind of ridiculous coming through here as they pass through each other. Good thing that didn't happen at night or they would have never seen it coming. Anyway, so you get the idea. This is what we're doing with Reddington right here. Now, we're not going to just stop here. We're going to actually add a little town that's going to service that, because once this port would open, it's going to create a lot of traffic. And in America, wherever there's traffic, there's commerce. And that's not necessarily to say that you're buying and selling the goods that come off the boats. I'm sure that's happening quite a bit, but more than likely they're trying to sell things to the people who are operating the ships and the people who are shipping by land that are coming in there. Plus, people are going to be living here to service the ships that come in, make sure they, unload and load the boats. Now that quay wall is extremely high. I'm really not fond of that, but considering the water level will oftentimes top it, I'm just going to live with this the way it is. So that's pretty cool. And as you can see, there's more delivery trucks, and that's going to save us a whole lot of, that's going to save us a whole lot of work as far as trying to deal with traffic coming into Reddington. Take a look at traffic coming in over here on the land-based side. Well, we've got a lot of it, and some of that is probably pass-through traffic. I'm not sure that all the traffic that we're seeing is just import and export traffic from Reddington. Something I've noticed is that the AI does not really like to route on these dirt roads. It wants something fast like a highway. It's expecting that because that's what the game was designed for. So you don't really see some of these other roads used pretty much at all for the time being. There are a few trucks on this one though, so that's good to see. So it's not perfectly devoid of traffic. Let me see if this other one over here is getting used. I'm not seeing anything so far, but we do have a connection over here. We just don't have anybody really using it. That one is probably the longest and a little bit circuitous. Not too bad, but I don't think anybody's using it. But it's a perfectly fine connection that we'll probably see more use of. Land-based shipping was not really a thing in the United States or in the rest of the world for the most part, because water was always so much faster, because it didn't take anywhere near the effort for a man or a machine or a beast of burden to move the freight. And there were no hills on water. And if there were, well, you got out of the water, because hills in water are waterfalls. That's really a bad idea. So water was a really great way of shipping things for the longest time. And so we're going to start with water-based shipping and go from there. Now, like we said, there'd probably be a town. Now, we're not going to have this town. Let's get my terrain lines back here. We're not going to have this town built right down here by the port. We only need to be near the port. Remember, these guys don't want to catch malaria. They're going to be living next to this port. So they're not going to really mind walking down there every day to go to work. And they're definitely not going to mind having all the people shipping things. So let's put a few businesses down here. We're just going to go with low density commercial. We're going to put a few commercial businesses down here next to the port so that these people can sell some stuff. And we're going to make sure they're smaller than that. We're going to keep it nice and small for starters. And we'll let that grow in. And then the other thing we'll do is we'll put a few businesses along the hill here. But I'm not going to overwhelm it. This isn't going to be a super crazy busy spot, at least realistically speaking, though it is going to be very busy for the game because the game likes this sort of connectivity. It's a much faster route to ship, and the game knows it. Now, up here, I think at this crossroads would make decent sense for a town that's going to be within walking distance, and we'll probably build a walking path or two over here too. So let's throw let's throw another business or two up here, because chances are good that people who live in this area are going to want to buy things too. Let's put in some streets here. Okay, so this looks like a nice little tiny town layout here. Actually, I'm going to add one more street. All right, so that's a nice little tiny town right here. I think that'll work for what we're trying to accomplish here. I'm going to just throw in a couple of commercial buildings here, right here in the center of this little town. Put in a few of these little tiny places. This is not going to be a real big place, but it's going to have a handful of people here who work this new port. And I suppose we probably should add, we'll add an elementary school out here. Of course, we need to get some electricity out here. Let's see. Oh, looks like if we just zone out here, we might be able to get some for free or without more investment. Okay, so everything's got water now. Still waiting on a little bit of electricity here. But this should be a good little start for a little town out here. Let's give it a name. Let's build a little district out here and we'll call it Redport. I don't know, I can't think of a better name, but Redport is just going to be this little burg. I'm not in love with all these assets here. You might change those up in the near future. I'm really not happy with any of the vanilla assets, honestly. But this is a good start. Now, Redport is not going to be a very wealthy little place. It's going to have a nice little school for everybody to go to. It's going to have electricity at some point here too, hopefully soon. We could just get 1 or 2 houses to build in here. Come on. Is that so much to ask? Let's speed up the clock. That's not supposed to be happening. We're not supposed to be having those big ships. Makes me wonder if the mod's not working. Okay, good. Now we have electricity. Now I can talk and you guys can chill. Anyway, so this is not going to be a really big place. It's not going to be a very wealthy place. Although it will get wealthier over time. Because it's going to be on the way for all the shipping. And that shipping is eventually going to get a whole lot more as bigger and bigger ships come in from the ocean. I don't know why that's happening, but I have to look into that. That wasn't happening just a bit ago. There's a mod and an asset, and basically the mod works in that it only allows certain assets to use the river cargo harbor. And it's supposed to be just these ones. There's several different container ships instead of just having one. Whoops. But either way, this is a nice little addition to Reddington. I think Redport is a nice little burg we can have some fun with down the line. It'll be interesting just to see how this whole area develops. I know it lacks some symmetry, but if you look at the terrain lines, I think you can get a pretty good idea as to why. This is pretty steep. I'm not going to build a whole lot on the steep ground, and some of these people over here are probably among the more wealthy. They don't want to be near the noise, and they don't have to be because they're the boss. They just, send a note, have somebody send them a note, and down the street here, or they walk down. Now, that's something I forgot to add is footpaths. Let's add a footpath. Now, this is not going to be a paved path because that wouldn't make any sense. So we'll use a gravel path, which will look nothing like a dirt path. Now, how would they get down from here? Well, honestly, they'd probably just go straight on down. So let's just have it go straight up the hill here, in between here. So that will allow people to go down here to work, and it'll allow people to get back up home from being in town. Now we're seeing lots of not enough workers. Not really sure what to think about this. That's odd, since there should be a lot more people living here. Oh, there's a lot more jobs here than there should be. So I'm going to cut back on some of those jobs. Wow, there's a lot of jobs. It's probably not easy for everybody to get down here. It's pretty far from town. Probably just need more residents. All right, so let's add a few more residential buildings down here. Maybe this will help our problem out. All right, let's see if those people moving in will help fill some of these jobs. Let's see how we were doing. We had a really lopsided ratio with lots of, okay, it's a little better. We probably need a lot more people to come in from Reddington to be able to work these jobs. We do have a few cars parked here, which are indicating that that may be happening. Either that or those are shoppers. This is somebody who's shopping and well educated, not likely to take these jobs down here that are low wage. And that's another shopper. So we're getting some shoppers in from downtown Reddington, but we're not getting any workers in. That'd really be helpful, wouldn't it? Well, apparently this little community is going to get a little bit bigger because I need to add more people to work the job. So let's add just a few more streets. I'll put a couple of zones, big zones right here on the edge, because that'll be overlooking the river. They'll have the river as their backyard. So that would be expensive property. Somebody wealthy would live there. And it looks like everything is balanced out much better now. Oh yeah, that's a lot better. It was a pretty steep ratio there for a bit. So I have to figure out why it is that we're getting the ocean ships when we're not supposed to be. Otherwise, this is a really great little town. I feel like this is a really great little start to a port. I need to add some more water. So this is a nice little town right here serving this port. I think that will work out really nicely serving Reddington up there on top of the hill. This will also be a nice little neighborhood to anchor in whatever development may occur down here later, because this is bound to be very expensive property going forward through time because of all the wonderful water views. If you take a look here, some of these houses have to have spectacular riverside views. So we're going to take advantage of that. I'm going to try to find some assets on the workshop and really try to make this look a little better. I am also swamped with a lot of things going on right now in my own personal life. But thankfully, nobody's ended up in the cemetery lately. In fact, I actually used a little hack with the mod. I've emptied the cemetery. I'm going to let it refill again, because cemeteries are really useful. I know some people like to have them look full. That's cool, but if they are full, then they don't really help with death care. And crematoriums are great on their own, but if you notice, they only have 7 hearses. Cemeteries, on the other hand, have 10 hearses. So while they may fill up, and it's really annoying to have to take them away again, they're really useful to have around in the event that you end up with a death wave, which is actually really common in city skylines. So I highly recommend having both crematoriums and cemeteries, and have the cemeteries be able to receive dead people. And that will actually help manage death waves further down the line. So everything in Reddington is starting to get healthier again. We're not quite back up to the population, even with adding Redport over there. We're not back up to the population that we had before, but we are making progress in getting back there. We're getting close right now. I think we were up to 6,300 at the end of the episode before I built all the roads, before the last episode. So this is a great place, I think, to end it. We built a nice little riverside town here overlooking the river with a gorgeous little port that isn't exactly period realistic, but neither are the trucks and the cars. Be wagons and stuff bringing things in, but it will help us geographically tell the story of Reddington and how this town would have developed over time. So we want to make sure to honor that as much as we possibly can, because it's going to give us a more realistic transportation infrastructure when we get to modern times. Because the history of the geography, all of that figures in, it all matters on how that road network developed, how the railroads developed, all of those things. So right now, I think we are in a good spot. One of the things I would really love to have, in case somebody is an ambitious asset builder, I know there's a barge mod out there. I would be really cool with using that, except for that it only moves things around the map. And with the rocks and everything, I don't think I'm going to be using barges to move things around the map. There's a very good chance they would have just dropped logs into the river, and at some point, use that to bring the logs downstream to a sawmill. But I don't know. That's not really something that the game included. Hey, we don't even have pipelines for oil, so what are you gonna do? Or conveyor belts for ore. So here's what we're gonna do. right now, and we're going to stick with this. But if there's an asset builder who would like to make this so that I could connect rail to it, that would be super useful. Did you enjoy this video? Please leave a like, and of course, subscribe if you want to see us introduce the Iron Horse in the next episode of Reddington. I want to thank all my Patreon supporters, and I want to thank you for watching. So long!